Socialism.
On the eve of the 2024 election, I tweeted out, "Tomorrow is election day. Remember, the candidate who loses lost because they did not appeal to my sensibilities enough. Whereas the candidate who wins won precisely because of the areas in which they appealed to my sensibilities." The joke here is at the expense of a certain kind of self-serving punditry you tend to get from populists. Populist pundits are self-appointed speakers for the people. They know what the people want and are willing to fight for it. So what does a self-styled champion of the people do when an election doesn't go their way? Well, given that the one thing a populist cannot concede is that they might not actually be popular, or that they might not be as in tune with the people as they'd have you believe, the pundit usually goes into spin mode. That is, if they don't just straight up deny the election results. A great example of this is Crystal Ball after the 2024 election. Crystal, like a lot of people, incorrectly predicted that Kamala Harris would win. I don't really care about that. People get elections wrong, it's whatever. What did annoy me, though, is in the aftermath of the election, she was very quick to push back against Sagar's sweeping narratives.
To read like a ideologically consistent mandate into any election result, I think is a fool's errand. Because, I mean, if you ask people they're overwhelmingly in favor of universal health care. So, to just say,
as a concept.
What they just voted for was to burn it down. That's certainly one element of it, but I also think that there's a lot of ideological inconsistencies among the American people, to say the least.
Yet she was quite happy to make her own broad statements about the electorate.
Really?
Joe was losing it in terms. He had a whole 3-minute long monologue, which he can't even play all of it.
I mean,
he
should, but he should, because his ideology.
Yeah.
Which is the neoliberal on the Republican side and now on the Democratic side, it has been repudiated.
And you could see he was shook.
So he should be shook.
Yeah, I mean, he was shook.
Much more his ideology than, anyone at this table was really thoroughly rebuked. And there's kind of no way around that.
For the record, she may not have even been wrong to push back against Sagar's conclusions. It's that when someone's takeaway from an election is counter to her sensibilities, she's quick to take a more nuanced view. Yet she'll make her own strong declarations if it means that the people agree with her. And Trump's election being the end of neoliberalism was the best she could come up with. As an aside, I find it very strange that 2024 was the election that ended neoliberalism, because I was told that Joe Biden's presidency was ending the neoliberal era. But that's a topic we'll have to explore another time. If you watch this channel, you are probably already familiar with the online left's analysis of elections. According to these people, the vast majority of the country is progressive, which means that progressive candidates never really lose their races, and non-progressives never really win theirs. If a Republican beats an establishment Democrat, it's because the Democrat wasn't progressive enough, and a real lefty surely would have won the race. If an establishment Democrat beats a Republican, it's because the Democrat did some LARPing as a progressive, and a real progressive surely would have won the race by more. If either an establishment Democrat or a Republican beats a progressive, there's always some other factor at play. The media was unfair to the progressive, the opponent had more money, the process was rigged, etc. You know the sort of stuff they come up with. Again, it's not that the online left is unique in this sort of analysis. It's that among the people who do engage in this sort of self-serving rhetorical garbage, they make the most excuses because they win the least. Despite the supposed ubiquitous popularity of progressive policies, leftist candidates who champion these policies almost always lose their races. Progressives have the highest ratio of supposedly popular ideas to actual proponents of those ideas in elected office. Don't take my word for it, just ask them how many politicians they have in their corner. It will be a very short list. So that's what happens when they lose, which again is the vast majority of the time. What happens when they actually win, though? And by win, I don't mean some imaginary victory, like the one Bernie Sanders wins every presidential election that he wasn't in. No, what happens when a genuine lefty wins a real race, and one of consequence at that? Well, you get this. In case you somehow haven't heard, New York State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani is now the mayor-elect of New York City. The online left hailed him as one of their champions, and rightly so. He is of their ilk.
As has so often occurred,
The billionaire class has sought to convince those making $30 an hour that their enemies are those earning $20 an hour. They want the people to fight amongst ourselves so that we remain distracted from the work of remaking a long broken system.
People like Hassan Piker and Ryan Grimm were even present at his victory party. He's a member of the Democratic Socialists of America and campaigned as such during his race. In a 2020 race, he made a campaign video advocating for socialism.
A lot of people are afraid of the word socialism, and a lot of people have misconceptions about what it means. I'm a democratic socialist, and what socialism means to me is a commitment to dignity, a state that provides whatever is necessary for its people to live a dignified life.
There is absolutely no mistaking this man's leftist credentials. And let's give the devil his due. He won the race fair and square. In a three-way race with record turnout, Mamdani got 50.4% of the votes. And while the mayor of New York City cannot directly affect national policy through his office, make no mistake, this is a significant post and a significant victory for the online left. New York City is, of course, the largest city in the United States. The population of New York City is larger than 38 states, its civil service is larger than that of 47 states, and its budget is bigger than most states as well. On top of this, New York City is the financial, cultural, and media capital of the United States. Not to mention that it does have an important diplomatic role, in that the UN headquarters are located there. This is significant given that Mamdani said that he would have certain world leaders arrested should they visit the city. So yeah, this is a big deal. In fact, this might be the most significant progressive victory in my lifetime. Sure, people like AOC and Bernie Sanders can affect national policy in a way that Mamdani won't be able to as mayor, but his decisions are arguably going to have a greater impact on more lives, as he will be in an executive role. And as far as I'm concerned, if he actually follows through with his campaign promises, he will affect people's lives for the worse. Now, it's debatable how much he'll actually be able to do. We'll come back to that later. But for the sake of the good people of New York City, I hope that he is a feckless and ineffective leader. As you all know, friend of the channel, Sean, aka Actual Justice Warrior, lives in what will soon be the People's Republic of New York City. When the breadlines emerge and poor Sean can't feed his family, I will personally lead the effort to airlift him care packages, a la the United States sending West Berlin aid after the Soviet Union placed a blockade on the city in 1948. This is, of course, if Mamdani's secret police don't send Sean to a gulag first. Stay strong, brother. Going back to the electoral analysis, I'll say that following this victory, the online left mostly followed the typical script. Mamdani's victory is proof that what Americans want is a progressive champion, and that this should be the model going forward for the Democratic Party.
He's doing the thing that every Democrat said after Trump's election win last time. Every Democrat was like, we need a Democrat who can bring back the minority communities and hold young men, and that's exactly what Zohran did.
Previous non-progressive candidates who won were only victorious because party leadership brainwashed the base into voting that way, whereas Zohran was a candidate that people genuinely wanted.
But I think the real reason why they hate him so much is because he's a living embodiment of the fact that Democratic leadership no longer has control over the Democratic base. Him and Graham Plattner are living embodiments of, like, you no longer get to set the Overton window. You no longer get to tell us who's electable and who's not, who's acceptable and who's not. And Zohran in particular, because of him being, you know, this young Muslim, socialist, anti-Zionist, immigrant, all those things that are supposed to be, this is all too far. We just, that the electorate can't take it. I mean, he said some, he said the whole, NYPD, queer liberation, all the stuff.
Middle finger to the Columbus statue.
Yeah, he did all of it, right? And voters were still like, no, that's our guy. I think that's the real thing that they hate the most viscerally about him, is that it proves that their power that they did really have with the base up until this moment is basically gone.
Sure, other Democrats did well in other races, but they surely would have done better if they were more like Mamdani.
We were just given a mandate to have effectively like a Zohran Mamdani type character in every race. Like if there was some Zohran type character running for governor of Virginia, I think he probably would have won by more.
Why don't we talk about those other elections that happened on the same night? For some reason, a few states in the Union have off-year elections, meaning voting neither coincides with the presidential election nor the midterms. The gubernatorial race in Virginia is always one of these. For probably the last 20 years or so, this race has taken on the status of a bellwether for future elections, as Virginia has been a purplish state for the last 2 decades or so. On top of that, governors can only serve one term. so there's never an incumbent advantage. If Virginia is indeed a bellwether, and I'm not sure that it is, but it probably serves as a better example of one than New York City, this election is bad news for Republicans and cuts against the idea that Mamdani is the blueprint for electoral success for the Democrats. Former Democratic House member Abigail Spanberger flipped the governor's mansion from red to blue with 57.2% of the vote to the Republicans' 42.6%. Spanberger, to my knowledge, has never been on the short list of elected officials who are sufficiently progressive for the online left to fawn over. I really can't even remember anyone even talking about her. But she seems much more like the type who would be considered part of the establishment than a leftist. For what it's worth, she is considered a moderate by the traditional press, as she has pushed back against slogans like defund the police. New Jersey also elected a new governor that night, with another congresswoman. In this case, Mickey Sherrill beat the Republican Jack, some Italian last name, by a very similar margin. 56.5% to 42.9% as of the making of this video. New Jersey is not considered a bellwether like Virginia is, but it is a state where Republicans have won statewide within recent memory. Chris Christie was the governor not that long ago, after all. While Sherrill had a polling advantage going into Election Day, a lot of people thought this race had potential for upset, as Sherrill seemed to be a pretty lackluster candidate with some baggage. For what it's worth, Mickey Sherrill is also considered a moderate in Congress. And then you had the Minneapolis mayoral race, where you had incumbent Jacob Frey winning a narrow victory over another Muslim socialist, Minnesota State Senator Omar Fatah. While the late Lord Frey has definitely engaged in some obnoxious pandering, particularly surrounding the George Floyd thing, he definitely is more moderate than Fatah. So, in other words, this isn't true.
Here's the thing. Democrats won literally everywhere, regardless of what kind of Democrat they were, if they were a centrist Democrat or they were a left-wing Democrat. But wherever there was an option of a left-wing Democrat, the overwhelming majority of the time, the furthest left Democrat won. That's literally like the perfect scenario.
Now, let me be clear. I don't necessarily attribute these candidates' victories to their status as moderates. No more than I think Mamdani's socialism necessarily won him his race. If you watch this channel, you know that I don't think issues matter that much in most elections. Other factors usually play a much larger role, regardless of who wins. In my opinion, the fact that Mamdani is handsome, charismatic, and had totally lackluster opponents helped him win just as much as any of his policy positions. I will say though, much to my chagrin, leftist populist rhetoric, the railing against billionaires and such, is something that appeals to a lot of voters, and certainly helped with his fundraising if nothing else. This rhetoric alone made him a star with the online left. And remember, while only New York City residents can vote in the race, any American can donate or volunteer for his campaign. As an aside, while I loathe Mandani and would have voted for Cuomo where I live in New York City, I really don't blame anyone for not wanting to go that route. Andrew Cuomo really sucks in his own right, and ran a disgraceful campaign, which is a fitting end to a disgraceful career in politics. At least it should be the end of his political career. If there's one silver lining to Mamdani's victory, it's that he may well have ended Cuomo's political future. While most people in the know were pretty confident that Mamdani was going to win going into Election Day, there were some preemptive excuses being made just in case things didn't go well. Here's my favorites.
I feel it's a good time to point out that the Democratic Party, the DNC, has fought this rock star guy every step of the way. They've done everything they can do to undermine his campaign, including funding his opposition. This is disgusting, dirty politics, and it should just go to show you, a vote for the Democratic Party is not a vote for leftist values. This guy espouses actual leftist values, and they've thrown him under the bus time and time again, but not hard enough. Apparently still winning. Whoops.
I mean, dude, it's crazy to watch both the DNC and Trump agree and attack the the Democratic candidate.
Yeah.
I mean, Cuomo lost. He lost in the primary, and now they're basically funding him as an independent.
This simply isn't true. There was a ton of outside spending against Mamdani and for Cuomo in the final weeks of the campaign, but not a single dime of it was spent by the DNC. The DNC almost always ignores the New York City mayoral race, and this was no exception. Feel free to check open secrets if you don't believe me. But of course, it doesn't need to be true to be an excuse to blame away a loss, lest we not forget the imaginary Bloody Monday. The bottom line is, these people suck, they're sore losers when they don't get their way, and they're even more insufferable when they do occasionally win. And now that Mamdani has one, what's next? While I joked about gulags and breadlines earlier, I really do think his policies suck and would make New York City a much worse place. And I don't want to see that happen. I love our cities and think they're vital to our health as a nation, just as our rural areas are. And on this front, I'm actually a tad optimistic. Mamdani has made some big campaign promises. Promises that are going to be hard to keep. I don't know New York City politics that well. Certainly not as well as I know national politics. I will say that in national politics, political novices and outsiders tend to have a hard time getting things done when compared to political animals. The animals just know the system better and can navigate it, whereas the newbies, even the glamorous ones, have a pretty steep learning curve coming into office. Compare the effectiveness of Lyndon Johnson's presidency to that of his predecessor if you don't believe me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I assume that this holds true for New York City as well. In other words, I think Mamdani will have more trouble passing his agenda than a seasoned veteran would. Furthermore, Mamdani is promising things that he cannot even deliver on as mayor. He says he wants to raise income taxes on people who make over $1 million a year, and raise corporate taxes as well. The thing is, taxation is handled at the state level. So, as mayor, he really can't do that. He could, in his current post as a state assemblyman, propose a bill doing both of those things tomorrow, but he hasn't done that. As with any ambitious politician, there are lots of roadblocks in the way of achieving Mamdani's agenda. Dude barely got 50% of the vote when his main opponent was another Democrat. So for as much fanfare as his victory has with the online left, it's not like he has some huge mandate with New York City voters. The constraints on what he can do are very real. And achieving anything in the realm of what he wants to do will require compromise. The problem is, his base of support, the same online leftists who made video after video encouraging people to support him, don't believe that these constraints exist. They think that politicians can achieve whatever they want, as long as they fight.
Fight, a fighter, a fight for fight. The fighter. I'm gonna fight like, hey, to fight, more don't fight today. Supposed to fight? No, you get in the fight, right? Be civil, don't fight. Don't get in the fight then. In setting a fighter to war is fighters. Hey, I wanna fight for you, so what are we, I gotta fight for you, so what am I gonna fight for? Fight them! A fight with a fighter for you. A fight for the people and fighter, you fight for it. Fight the Republicans. If you don't fight, you're never gonna, that'll fight for you. I'm gonna fight for you. We fight.
And by fight, they mean the politician gives rousing speeches where they call out their opponents, or doing criminal things like blackmailing and transigence.
If you don't vote for this bill, your career's done, son. And Joe Manchin, oh, would you look at that? Looks like your family's in some legal trouble. Looks like your daughter is part of the EpiPen scandal where we have her caught, dead to rights, saying, let's come up with a rationalization in order to jack up and price gouge on EpiPens. Illegally colluding with Pfizer. We have the emails. Now, maybe Merrick Garland and my DOJ is going to come after you, and maybe your family's going to go to jail. Unless, of course, you vote for this bill. Then we can work something out. You have dirt on all of them. Use it. You have leverage. Use it.
It's what Brendan Nehan called the Green Lantern theory of politics. Politicians, particularly executives, just need to show enough willpower and they can get done what they want. They fight, and boom, we live in the progressive utopia. Because Mamdani's goals are so ambitious, and because the people who support these goals are so naive as to think they can actually be done easily, disappointment seems pretty much inevitable. Mamdani, like most politicians who get elected on bold platforms, will likely not succeed in implementing most of what he campaigned on. So I'm going to make a prediction here. Within a year, most of his supporters will denounce him as a sellout. He won't achieve much of his agenda, mostly because a lot of it is simply unrealistic, but his former supporters will claim it's because he doesn't have the willpower, or he's been co-opted by some nefarious cabal, or because he was lying on the campaign trail and never really wanted those things in the first place.
I said when he got elected, the first commentary I gave on Zohran Mamdani was, let's see if he keeps that campaign energy once he's mayor.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, meeting Trump and sucking on his little orange mushroom is not the same energy he was keeping during the campaign. Let's just put it that way.
No, really not.
And if it continues, then it's just another example of a grassroots campaign that was actually just astroturfed, right?
It's politics 101.
Leftist, and then it's just a dude that's going to be another centrist quasi Republican.
Yeah.
Mamdani right now may well be in the vanguard of a revolution. But here's the thing about revolutions. They eat their own.